Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. My name is Eric Johnson. I am 35 years old, and 3 weeks ago, a urologist told me I had a massive kidney stone. Not a tiny grain of sand that passes with a grimace in a bottle of water, but an 8 mm stone lodged in my ureter, blocking everything and causing hydronephrosis. The doctor explained it meant my kidney was swelling because urine could not drain. If the blockage stayed, the pressure would slowly kill the kidney. He told me in a calm professional tone that without surgery within about 2 weeks, there was a real risk of permanent damage. I sat on the crinkly paper of the exam table in that chilly office, trying to pretend I was not freaking out. The urologist, Dr. Harris, pulled up the scan on the computer and pointed to the bright white dot. Dr. Harris said, "This needs to come out soon. The procedure is fairly routine, but timing is not optional. I recommend you schedule it as soon as possible." Then he pulled up the cost estimate. With your insurance deductible, you are looking at around $12,000 out of pocket for the procedure and hospital stay. I swallowed hard but nodded. We had an emergency fund for exactly this kind of thing. That is what I kept telling myself while my heart pounded. For 5 years, I had been funneling money into a separate savings account that my wife Tanisha and I called the emergency fund. It was in both our names, but I had contributed about 90% of it. I'm a saver by nature. I bring my lunch to work, drive a paid-off car, and ignore most sales. Tanisha makes decent money as a project coordinator at a marketing firm, but she is a spender. New clothes, weekend trips, surprise gifts for her younger sister Latoya, restaurant dinners 3 nights a week. She loves comfort and experiences. We had talked about it many times. The compromise we landed on was that I would build and guard the emergency fund while she handled more of the day-to-day lifestyle spending. Over 5 years, that fund had grown to $15,000. The rule, which we had discussed many times while sitting at our small kitchen table, was simple. No one touches the emergency fund unless it is a real emergency. Not a vacation, not a new television, not holiday gifts. It was for job loss, medical crises, or some disaster like the car dying completely. I thought we were on the same page. So after I left Dr. Harris's office that afternoon, I drove home through downtown traffic, feeling scared but weirdly grateful that financially we could handle this. That night, I waited until Tanisha got home from work. She came in with her usual whirlwind of perfume and shopping bags, kissed my cheek, and started talking about some drama with a coworker before she even took off her heels. I let her finish, then said, "Baby, sit down for a minute. I need to tell you something." She dropped onto the couch and looked at me, suddenly serious. I told her about the scan, about the 8 mm stone, about how the kidney was already swelling. I repeated Dr. Harris's words about possible permanent damage if we waited too long. Tanisha's eyes went wide and glossy. For a moment, I thought she was about to cry. I told her, "I scheduled the procedure for next Friday. The estimate is $12,000 out of pocket, but our emergency fund has $15,000. We will still have a $3,000 buffer afterward. It is exactly why we saved this money." I expected relief, maybe another hug. Instead, I watched every bit of color drain from her face. Her shoulders tensed. Her hand went to her phone like it was a life raft. "About that," she said softly. Something in my stomach dropped. I felt a cold, creeping dread. I stared at her. "About what?" I asked. "The emergency fund," Tanisha said. She would not quite meet my eyes. I sat up straighter. "What about it?" It took her a few seconds to answer, and in those seconds my mind sprinted through possibilities that all felt bad. Tanisha finally blurted, "I used it." The words hung between us like smoke. For a second I thought I had misheard. "Used it?" I repeated slowly. "What do you mean used it?" Tanisha bit her lip and twisted her phone in her hands. "Latoya needed help with her wedding," she said. "The venue required full payment up front, and she was short. It is her dream wedding, Eric. I could not let her lose the date or the deposit." I just stared at my wife. "You gave our emergency fund to your sister for a wedding?" I asked. Tanisha rushed to correct me. "I did not give it. I loaned it to her. She will pay us back after the honeymoon. She promised." I rubbed my temples and tried to keep my voice even. "How much did you give her?" I asked. Tanisha exhaled hard, like she had been hoping I would not ask that detail. 14,000, she said. My heart hammered. You gave your sister $14,000 from our emergency fund, I said, without even asking me. Tanisha snapped. It is not just your fund. My name is on it too. I do not need your permission to help my family. She's my sister. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me that had nothing to do with the kidney. It is our emergency fund, I said. I need emergency surgery. This is literally the exact situation we saved that money for. Tanisha folded her arms. You can wait one more week, she said. Stop being so dramatic. People deal with kidney stones all the time. This is uncomfortable, yes, but not life-threatening. Latoya's wedding is one day. She has been planning it for 2 years. It is a once-in-a-lifetime event. I stared at her. So is having functioning kidneys, I said. Dr. Harris said waiting could cause permanent damage. Tanisha waved that away. Doctors always exaggerate to get you to act right away, she said. Your surgery will still be there next month. She just needs the money now because the venue wants it this week. The wedding is 2 Saturdays from now. She will pay it back after they get back from the honeymoon, and then you can reschedule your procedure for the following week. It is actually perfect timing. She said that with a smile, like she had solved the puzzle. I almost laughed from sheer disbelief. I tried to explain again. Tanisha, I am not in minor discomfort. I am passing blood. I get random fever spikes. The pain knocks me to my knees. I almost had to pull over twice on the drive home because I could not see straight. She shook her head. You are making this bigger than it is, she said. You always catastrophize. My sister has been dreaming about this wedding since she was a teenager. Family comes first. You know that. You are trying to ruin her special day over something that can wait. We argued until nearly midnight. Every time I tried to bring the conversation back to my kidney and the doctor's warning, she redirected it to her sister, the venue, the non-refundable deposits, the embarrassment Latoya would feel if she had to change the date. At one point, Tanisha snapped, You are making everything about you. And I just sat there staring at her, wondering how my possible organ damage was somehow selfish. Eventually, she went to bed in tears, accusing me of not caring about her family. I lay awake on the couch, hunched over, feeling the familiar stabbing ache wrap around my side. Over the next 2 days, my symptoms got worse. The pain deepened and spread, and I started having chills in the middle of the afternoon. I called Dr. Harris's office, and the nurse reminded me gently that a blocked kidney can become infected quickly. She urged me to go to the emergency room if the pain escalated or if I developed a fever. When I repeated that to Tanisha, she said, They always tell you to go to the emergency room. It does not mean you actually need to. Just take something stronger and rest. You will be fine until after the wedding. Tuesday night, while we sat at the kitchen table eating takeout because she was too stressed about wedding planning to cook, Tanisha looked up from her phone and said, Latoya just sent pictures of the venue. The place is gorgeous. You will see when you are walking around healthy and happy at the wedding. You will forget all about this. I stared at the picture on her screen. White chairs, a floral arch, a polished wooden floor. All I could think was that my kidney might be paying for those flowers. Early Thursday morning, I woke up shaking. My teeth chattered. My skin felt hot and cold at the same time. When I tried to stand, the room tilted and a bolt of pain shot from my back through my abdomen. I stumbled to the bathroom and threw up until there was nothing left. When I checked my temperature, it was over 103 degrees. For a few minutes, I tried to convince myself it would pass. Then another wave of pain hit, so hard my legs buckled. I crawled to the bedroom door and gasped, Tanisha, I need to go to the emergency room. She sat up, confused and annoyed, mascara smudged from the night before. Eric, it is barely morning, she said. You probably caught a stomach bug. I could barely speak through the pain. I have a fever. I cannot stop vomiting. It is the kidney. Please. Something in my face must have finally gotten through to her, because she cursed under her breath, grabbed her keys, and helped me to the car. The drive to the hospital felt endless. I did not remember most of it. I remember the parking lot spinning and Tanisha complaining about her missed hair appointment. In the emergency room, everything blurred into bright lights, urgent voices, needles, and monitors. A nurse took one look at my vitals and called for a doctor immediately. They ran blood tests, put in an intravenous line, and not long after that, someone said the word sepsis. The infection in my blocked kidney had spread to my bloodstream. Dr. Harris appeared, pulled in for emergency consultation, and told me, We have to operate tonight. We are moving you to surgery as soon as they clear a room. They wheeled me away while Tanisha called her mother from the waiting area, telling her she would probably miss that evening's rehearsal dinner. The surgery itself is a blur. I woke up in the intensive care unit with tubes in my arms, monitors beeping steadily around me, and a crushing exhaustion that made even opening my eyes feel like work. My throat was sore from the breathing tube they had used. A nurse explained gently that my kidney had been very close to failing completely, but they had managed to relieve the obstruction and start aggressive antibiotics in time. I had spent 3 days in the intensive care unit before they were comfortable moving me to a regular room. The entire time my body felt like it had been hit by a truck. At some point, a woman from billing came in with a clipboard and a kind but businesslike smile. She sat beside my bed and explained the cost breakdown. Because the procedure had been performed as an emergency, my insurance treated it differently than a scheduled surgery. Our share after insurance was $18,000. I stared at the number, fuzzy with pain and medication, and thought about the $15,000 that used to be in our emergency fund. I thought about Tanisha saying, "It is just a stone." Tanisha visited me once while I was in the intensive care unit. She came in wearing a dress I recognized from one of Latoya's bridal shower photos and carrying a bouquet of gas station flowers. She kissed my forehead and said, "I'm glad you are okay," then added, "But did it really have to be this week? You have no idea how stressful this timing has been." I looked at her, unable to believe she was serious. "I almost lost a kidney," I said. Apparently, I did not have the luxury of picking a convenient week. She sat down and crossed her legs. "We will figure out the bills," Tanisha said. "People set up payment plans all the time. The important thing is that you're fine now." I stared at the intravenous line in my arm and the monitor showing my heart rate ticking along. "The important thing," I said, "is that you drained our emergency fund behind my back for your sister's wedding and almost cost me an organ." Tanisha bristled. "I did not steal anything," she said. "I helped my sister." "You are being absolutely ridiculous." A nurse walking by slowed, obviously catching enough of the conversation to look uneasy. Tanisha noticed, sighed dramatically, and said she had to leave because she was already late for the rehearsal dinner. "Latoya is freaking out," she said. "She has been crying all morning. This is supposed to be the happiest week of her life, and now everyone is stressed and distracted." I watched my wife walk out of the room in a dress she had bought with my help, paid for by shared income, while my back throbbed with every breath. When she was gone, I stared at the ceiling for a long time. Anger curled tight inside my chest, mixing with exhaustion and fear. I thought about all the small comments over the years, the times Tanisha had brushed off my concerns about saving, the way every family gathering somehow turned into a discussion of what Latoya needed. I thought about Tanisha telling me I could wait for surgery so her sister could have her special day. Somewhere between the beeping of the monitors and the ache of my incision, something inside me settled into a hard, cold decision. I picked up my phone and called a divorce attorney. It felt surreal to be doing it from a hospital bed, still hooked up to an intravenous drip, but it also felt strangely clear. The receptionist transferred me to an attorney named Angela Parker. Her voice was brisk but not unkind. She asked what was going on, and I told her everything. The emergency fund, the kidney stone, the doctor's warnings, Tanisha giving $14,000 to her sister for the wedding, the way she had insisted I could wait. Attorney Parker listened quietly, occasionally asking questions to clarify dates or amounts. When I finished, she asked, "Do you have proof the money was taken from the emergency fund without your consent?" I told her I had bank statements showing the withdrawal and text messages where Tanisha admitted to using the money for the wedding. I also had years of deposit records showing that almost all of that money had come from my paychecks and bonuses. "Do you have anything documenting that this account was meant specifically for emergencies, especially medical ones?" she asked. I told her about the text conversations where I had spelled that out when we set up the account. Attorney Parker said, "We can file for divorce on the grounds of financial infidelity and reckless endangerment, at least in terms of argument. We can also pursue a civil claim against your sister-in-law for conversion of funds, if we can show she knew or should reasonably have known the money was not freely given by both owners of the account." Her tone hardened slightly. "It will not be cheap for you or quick, but based on what you have described, you have a solid case." I felt something like relief for the first time in days. "Do it," I said. "All of it." She sent the retainer paperwork electronically. I signed it on my tablet while the intravenous pump clicked in the background. The divorce filing went in the next morning. Attorney Parker also drafted a demand letter to LaToya, giving her 10 days to return the $14,000 or face a lawsuit. She copied the wedding venue on that letter, noting that the payment for their services was now part of a legal dispute. I did not know about that detail yet. I only learned later how big a bomb that would be. Tanisha was served with the divorce papers at LaToya's wedding venue on Saturday afternoon during the ceremony setup. I was still in the hospital, still on intravenous antibiotics, still sore and tired. Around 2 that afternoon, my phone exploded with messages and calls for numbers I recognized and numbers I did not. Eventually, I answered one from Tanisha's mother's phone because I knew Tanisha would be on the other end. She did not disappoint. The moment I said hello, Tanisha screamed, "What is wrong with you? You filed for divorce at my sister's wedding," Tanisha shouted. "Do you have any idea how humiliating this is?" I answered as calmly as I could, given that I was propped up in a hospital bed with fresh stitches in my side. "You stole our emergency fund while I needed life-saving surgery," I said. "Yes, I am divorcing you." Tanisha snapped back. "I did not steal anything. I was trying to help my sister. You are doing this just to ruin her wedding." I shook my head, even though she could not see it. "The timing is because the paperwork takes a few days," I said. "I signed everything from my hospital bed while you were at the rehearsal dinner." There was a long silence on the line. Then Tanisha's voice came back, smaller but still sharp. "You have been planning this since you found out about the money," she said. "Since I told you you could wait." I said, "Yes." There was another silence, then a hissed, "I hate you." I said, "That is your right. Your sister is getting her demand letter Monday. She has 10 days to return the $14,000, or my attorney files a lawsuit. That is happening whether you hate me or not." Tanisha gasped. "You cannot do that." "My attorney says I can," I replied. "Something about conversion of funds and fraud." She sounded very confident. Tanisha hung up. 3 minutes later she called again, still using her mother's phone. This time her voice was thick with tears. "Please do not do this," she said. "We can fix this. I will get the money back. I will talk to LaToya. Just please do not ruin her life over a misunderstanding." I looked at the intravenous line in my arm and the monitors around me. "Her wedding is not my problem," I said. "My kidney damage and $18,000 in hospital bills are my problem. My trust being shattered is my problem." Tanisha sniffed loudly. "I am sorry," she said. "I made a mistake. I will make it right. Please, Eric. We can go to counseling. We can start over." I replied, "You told me to wait for surgery while I was passing blood and running a fever so your sister could have a special day. You made it perfectly clear where I rank on your priority list. We are done." She whispered, "But I love you." I said, "You love your sister's wedding more. That is what your actions show." Then I hung up and blocked the number. I asked the nurses at the desk not to allow Tanisha or any member of her family to visit me. They nodded and made a note. One of them, a woman named Ms. Jackson who had been particularly kind, checked on me later and said quietly, "You are allowed to protect yourself." That small affirmation meant more than she probably realized. 3 days later I was discharged, moving slowly but upright. My older brother Brandon picked me up and drove me to his apartment across town. He and his wife had a spare room, and he insisted I stay there until I could manage on my own. At Brandon's place, things were quiet. His wife made soup and fussed over my medications. Brandon sat with me on the couch while I adjusted to the new reality. "So you really filed," he said, shaking his head. "From the hospital?" I nodded. "You should have heard her in my room," I said. She was more worried about missing a rehearsal dinner than about sepsis. Brandon let out a low whistle. "I like Tanisha," he said, "but that is something I cannot defend." I handed him my phone and showed him the text thread where she admitted to taking the emergency fund. He read for a while, then said, "She did this to herself." Meanwhile, the demand letter reached LaToya and the wedding venue. The venue's management reviewed the attorney's note about the disputed payment and pulled out their contract. Apparently, they had a clause about funds being subject to legal challenge. When LaToya called to confirm final details for the ceremony, they told her they were placing a hold on everything until the dispute over payment was resolved. No setup, no service, no wedding. LaToya immediately called Tanisha in hysterics. Tanisha, in turn, tried to call me using another number, then finally reached me through Brandon's phone when he stepped away. "You need to stop this right now," Tanisha said the moment I answered. "The venue will not let LaToya have the wedding. They are saying the payment is under some legal hold." I said, "That is unfortunate. Maybe she should return the $14,000 she took from a medical emergency fund, and this would resolve itself." Tanisha cried. "She cannot. The deposits are non-refundable. She cannot just get that money back. You are ruining her life." I replied, "She helped risk my kidney. I would say we are even." Tanisha's voice broke. "Please. She's my baby sister. This is her dream. Cannot you let it go? Can you reverse my kidney damage?" I asked, "Can you undo the week I spent in agonizing pain or the 3 days in intensive care?" Tanisha was quiet. "No," she finally said. "Then no." I answered, "I cannot let it go." She tried another angle. "She did not know it was medical money," Tanisha insisted. I told her it was just extra savings. She thought we had plenty. I said, "So you lied to her and stole from me. That is not making you look better." Tanisha kept crying, but I was done. I ended the call and blocked that number as well. A few days later, my phone rang again from a number I did not recognize. I answered cautiously. It was Tanisha's mother, Yolanda. She did not bother with greetings. "You need to stop this nonsense immediately," she said. "My daughters are devastated. You are destroying this family over money." I sighed. Over $14,000 that was taken from an emergency fund while I needed emergency surgery. I said, "Your daughter gambled with my health." Yolanda scoffed. "It was not stolen. It was borrowed. Family helps family. A wedding is not just some party. It is sacred. So is marriage," I replied. "Your daughter violated that when she prioritized a wedding over my life. She told me I could wait for surgery so LaToya could have her special day." Yolanda's voice sharpened. "You are being vindictive and cruel. People make mistakes. You are punishing her instead of forgiving." I said, "I am making sure mistakes have consequences. If you want to help your daughters, you could help pay back the money." She ignored that. "If you do not drop that lawsuit, we will," she started, then stopped as if searching for something to threaten. "You will what?" I asked. "Sue me? Go ahead. I have documentation. My attorney will be thrilled for the extra billable hours." Yolanda sputtered, "Call me heartless," and hung up. I blocked her too. While all of this churned, Tanisha moved out of our apartment. The lease was in my name only. She had moved in after we married. She went to stay with LaToya, who lived in a one-bedroom unit in a slightly rough part of town. Neither of them could afford anything bigger. Tanisha also discovered she could not access our joint checking account anymore. On Attorney Parker's advice, I had gone to the bank as soon as I was discharged and withdrawn half the balance, the exact 50% that was legally mine, and moved it to a new account in my name only. I did not touch her half. Tanisha called that financial abuse. My attorney called it basic asset protection during a divorce. Over text, Tanisha accused me of abandoning her, of leaving her with nothing. Every time she said that, I thought about waking up in the intensive care unit alone, except for nurses. I thought about her walking out after 20 minutes to make it to a rehearsal dinner. She still did not seem to grasp that she had already abandoned me when she chose LaToya's venue over my surgery. Meanwhile, she started maxing out her credit cards, trying to pay vendors who would not refund deposits, and covering LaToya's rent and bills when her sister's hours were cut at work. Word filtered back through mutual friends that their apartment was tense and miserable. A couple of weeks later, LaToya showed up unannounced at Brandon's door. It was a humid Saturday afternoon. I was on the couch watching television with an ice pack on my side when Brandon opened the door. I heard a woman's voice say, "Is Eric here? Please, I really need to talk to him." Brandon asked, "Who are you?" She said, "I am LaToya, his wife's sister. Please, it is important. Just 5 minutes." Brandon looked back at me. I shook my head, but curiosity tugged at me. After a second, I stood up slowly and walked to the doorway. LaToya looked smaller than I remembered from family gatherings. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, her eyes were swollen, and she clutched her purse like it was a shield. "Eric, please," she said. "I'm so sorry to bother you, but I do not know what else to do." Brandon said, "You have 2 minutes," and leaned against the hallway wall. LaToya turned back to me. "I will pay the money back," she said quickly. "Just please drop the lawsuit. The venue will not work with me until this is settled. My fiancé's family is asking questions. His mother already thinks I am irresponsible, and this is making it worse. I studied her. You will give back the full 14,000. I asked. Latoya hesitated. I can give 8,000 right now, she said. The rest over 6 months. I will get a second job. I will do whatever it takes. Please. This is ruining everything. I shook my head. So no, I said. You cannot pay it back. You want me to withdraw a lawsuit in exchange for a promise you already know you cannot fully keep. She teared up. I thought Tanisha had your blessing, she said. She told me it was extra money. I thought you two were doing well. I did not know it was medical money. You did not question why someone would suddenly loan you $14,000 interest-free. I asked. You did not think to call me or even text me to make sure I agreed? Latoya's shoulders slumped. I asked Tanisha if you were okay with it, she said. I have the texts. I said, is Eric cool with this? She said you would be once you saw how happy I was. I know that looks bad, but I trusted her. She's my big sister. She has always taken care of me. I sighed. We were doing okay, I said, because I was the one saying no to expenses. That money was 5 years of me sacrificing while you booked a luxury venue. Latoya wiped at her eyes. I'm truly sorry, she said. None of this was supposed to happen. I did not mean for you to get hurt. I did not know you were that sick. Tanisha kept saying it was a routine procedure. She did not tell us about sepsis or anything. I answered. She knew my kidney was at risk. She knew the doctor warned me not to delay. You would have known if you had asked. Latoya swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. What do you want from me? She asked. Tell me what will make this stop. $14,340, I said. That is the amount my attorney is demanding, including interest and court costs. Paid in full. After that, I might consider dropping the lawsuit, but I am not promising anything. Latoya's face crumpled. I do not have it, she said. I barely have 8,000. I'm already working more hours. My fiancé is helping. My parents are trying. I am drowning. Please do not do this. I shook my head slowly. My kidney does not care about your wedding budget, I said. My medical bills do not care about your timeline either. I am sorry you are drowning, but you helped push me underwater first. Brandon gently but firmly closed the door. He turned to me and said, That was cold. I sank back onto the couch. She helped put me in the hospital, I said, even if she did not intend it. Brandon nodded. You are allowed to be done, he said. Just make sure you can live with it. I looked over at the pile of prescriptions on the coffee table and the folder of hospital bills. I will, I said, and I meant it. Latoya left, still crying, and I put the encounter out of my mind as best I could while the legal machinery ground forward. Tanisha's attorney sent over a settlement proposal a couple of weeks later. She wanted 50% of all marital assets, which was fair enough in theory. She wanted 50% of my retirement account, which my attorney said we might not be able to avoid entirely. She also wanted $2,000 a month in spousal support for 2 years, despite the fact that she had a full-time job. And she wanted me to drop the lawsuit against Latoya and agree to split the medical bills evenly. When my attorney read it aloud, I laughed. I cannot help it. No to spousal support, I said. Absolutely not to dropping the lawsuit. And she wants me to split the medical bills she basically caused. Attorney Parker smiled faintly. I assumed you would feel that way, she said. Our counteroffer was firm. Marital assets split 50-50, but with the emergency fund theft accounted for by deducting $7,000 from Tanisha's share, representing her equitable responsibility for the drained account. No spousal support, given the financial infidelity. Medical bills split 60-40, with Tanisha paying 60% due to her direct role in delaying treatment. The lawsuit against Latoya would continue regardless of the divorce settlement. Neither side budged. The court scheduled our divorce hearing and, separately, the civil trial for the lawsuit against Latoya. While we waited, life settled into a strange, draining rhythm. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment closer to work once I was strong enough, using the cash I could salvage to furnish it with second-hand pieces. I went back to my job in operations at a logistics company. My boss, Mr. Williams, called me into his office my first day back. How are you really? He asked. I told him the basics. He listened, shook his head, and said, You did what you had to do, then took me out to lunch. At night, I lay in my new bed listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the faint sounds of traffic, my side aching in a dull, familiar way. The doctors told me I had lost about 40% function in the affected kidney. The other kidney was fine, so I could live a normal life, but the damage was permanent. If the surgery had happened when originally scheduled, Dr. Harris said during a follow-up appointment, we likely would have avoided the infection getting that far. The delay probably cost you half a kidney. He said it matter-of-factly, but it landed like a punch. Around the same time, my parents drove in from their town outside Atlanta to see me. We sat in my cramped living room, my mom fussing with the throw pillows. When I finished telling them everything, my mother said, I like Tanisha. I really did. But after hearing this, she is now that woman who tried to kill you. My father gave her a look, but he did not disagree. He said, you did what you had to do, son. You gave her trust, and she burned it. It felt good to have their support. I realized I'd been bracing for them to tell me I went too far. The day of the divorce hearing, I wore my best suit and sat next to Attorney Parker at the small wooden table in the courtroom. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Judge Robinson, looked like she had presided over every flavor of human conflict. She listened as Tanisha's attorney painted me as vindictive and obsessed with money. He quoted text messages where I had been curt and cold after the surgery. He called my decision to file divorce papers from a hospital bed calculated cruelty. Then Attorney Parker presented our side, with bank records, medical documents, and copies of the messages where Tanisha admitted what she had done. At one point, Judge Robinson looked directly at Tanisha and asked, did you withdraw $14,000 from your joint emergency fund to pay for your sister's wedding? Tanisha sniffed and said, yes, but I was going to pay it back. The judge asked, did your husband need surgery at that time? Tanisha tried to minimize. It was not an emergency when I made the withdrawal. He was exaggerating. Kidney stones are painful, but people live with them. The judge raised an eyebrow. I have medical records in front of me stating that he went into septic shock and required emergency surgery to save his kidney. That is, by definition, an emergency. Did you know he needed timely care? Tanisha's eyes filled with tears. I knew he had a procedure scheduled, she said. But my sister's wedding, Judge Robinson cut her off. I do not care about your sister's wedding, she said flatly. Answer the question. Did you take marital funds set aside for emergencies to pay for a non-emergency event while your husband was facing an actual medical emergency? Tanisha finally whispered, yes. The judge asked, and did you personally plan to repay those funds yourself? Tanisha said, LaToya was going to pay us back after the honeymoon. The judge nodded slowly. So you gave away $14,000 you did not contribute much to and expected someone else to cover it. After a short recess, Judge Robinson returned and gave a ruling. Marital assets would be split 50-50, except for the emergency fund, where contribution records showed that I had put in about $13,000 and Tanisha about $1,000. Tanisha would have $7,000 deducted from her share of the assets to account for her responsibility in draining the fund. There would be no spousal support. Each of us would pay our own legal fees. The medical bills for my hospitalization would be split 60-40, with Tanisha paying the larger share. Your client gambled that her husband's medical situation would not become serious. The judge said to Tanisha's attorney. She lost that gamble. These are the consequences. With a rap of the gavel, my marriage was officially over. Tanisha walked out of the courtroom without looking at me. Her attorney gathered their papers with tight, jerky motions. Attorney Parker shook my hand. This went about as well for you as it could have, she said. I felt more tired than triumphant. There was a swirl of paperwork afterward, asset transfers, and payment arrangements. In the end, I kept my full retirement account, 60% of the small amount we had accumulated together, and Tanisha now owed me about $3,500 to balance out the emergency fund issue. She also had to arrange a payment plan with the hospital for her share of my medical bills. 2 days after the divorce hearing, we were back in court for the lawsuit against LaToya. This judge, a man named Judge Ellis, was younger but no less serious. LaToya sat at the defendant's table in a conservative dress, looking like she had not slept in weeks. Her fiancé at the time, Reggie, sat behind her, jaw clenched. Her attorney argued that LaToya had not known the money was from a medical emergency fund and therefore had not committed fraud. They tried to frame it as a misunderstanding between spouses that should not have dragged LaToya in court. Attorney Parker calmly presented the text messages between Tanisha and LaToya. She highlighted the message where Latoya asked, "Is Eric really okay with this?" And Tanisha responded, "He will be when he sees how happy you are. Do not worry about it." She also highlighted the messages where Tanisha told Latoya not to worry about paying the money back quickly. The judge asked Latoya directly, "So you did question whether both owners of the account agreed to this transfer?" Latoya nodded, tears filling her eyes. "I just wanted to be sure," she said. Tanisha said you were fine with it. "Did you attempt to confirm with Mr. Johnson directly?" Judge Ellis asked. "A phone call, a message, anything?" Latoya shook her head. "No," she whispered. "I trusted my sister." The judge leaned back. "You accepted $14,000 from a joint account, knowing that one of the account owners had not personally confirmed the gift and that the funds had been described as extra savings without further detail," he said. "Given the amounts involved, that is careless at best." Latoya's attorney jumped in with an argument about married couples acting as a single financial unit, but the judge shook his head. Joint ownership does not mean one spouse can give away large sums without the other's knowledge, especially when those funds were explicitly earmarked for emergencies, Judge Ellis said. The plaintiff has provided clear evidence that the emergency fund had a stated purpose and that the defendant had reason to suspect the money might not be freely given. That meets the standard for conversion. He ruled in my favor, awarding me the full $14,000 plus court costs and 6% annual interest from the date the funds were withdrawn. The total was $14,340. Latoya burst into tears. Reggie put his head in his hands. The judge ordered that, given Latoya's income, repayment would occur through a structured plan for $100 per month until the judgment was satisfied, with wage garnishment authorized if she missed payments. Latoya's attorney requested 30 days to consider an appeal. The judge said they could appeal if they wished, but payments would begin immediately regardless. Outside the courtroom, Latoya's attorney pulled her aside to discuss options. Reggie approached me while Attorney Parker was packing up her briefcase. "This is going to bankrupt her," Reggie said quietly. She did not know that money was for medical bills. She would never have taken it if she knew. I looked him in the eye. "She did not bother to find out," I said. "She knew at least one of us had not agreed. She took it anyway because she wanted that venue." Reggie shook his head. "We were supposed to get married next month," he said. "Just a small courthouse ceremony. We cannot even afford that now." I said, "You should not plan weddings you cannot afford without borrowing money you do not have." His expression hardened. "You got your judgment," he said. "You won. Cannot you just let it go now?" "Why would I?" I asked. "My hospital bills are still sitting on my table. My kidney still hurts every time the weather changes. I spent 3 days in intensive care, and I'm going to be paying medical debts for years. But you think I'm the bad guy for wanting the money I saved for emergencies back?" Reggie did not have an answer. He turned away and walked back to Latoya, who was still crying. A few weeks later, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Reggie had broken off the engagement. Apparently discovering that your partner took $14,000 without permission was a deal-breaker for him. Months moved on. Latoya started making the $400 monthly payments. She picked up a second job at a strip mall clothing store in addition to her daytime work. She and Tanisha stayed in the cramped one-bedroom apartment, sometimes hosting Yolanda when she needed a break from her husband. Tanisha started making her own payments to the hospital, $200 a month for her share of the medical debt, a steady reminder of the consequences of her choices. She also finished paying me the $3,500 from the divorce settlement over 3 installments. On my side of town, my new life slowly took shape. I signed a year-long lease on a small but clean one-bedroom apartment. I bought a used couch, a second-hand dining table, and a bed that did not creak every time I breathed. On a whim, after one of my follow-up appointments, I adopted a gray tabby cat from a local shelter. When the volunteer asked what I wanted to name him, I said Kidney. She laughed and said, "That is dark," but she wrote it down. Kidney took to my place quickly, choosing my chest as his favorite sleeping spot. I started therapy not long after the court cases ended. My therapist, Dr. Mitchell, listened as I poured out the story, from the first kidney stone symptoms to the last judgment. She said, "You have every right to be angry. You were betrayed in a profound way. But we also have to work on making sure this does not define every relationship you have from now on." We talked about boundaries, red flags, and why I had ignored certain patterns with Tanisha like her habit of putting her sister's needs above our marriage. It was uncomfortable, but necessary work. Friends invited me out sometimes, tried to pull me back into social life. One evening, a coworker tried to set me up with her cousin at a game night. I smiled, chatted politely, and then declined when the cousin suggested we exchange numbers. On the ride home, Brandon asked, "You were really not ready, huh?" I said, "The last person I trusted with my life savings and my health told me to wait for emergency surgery so her sister could walk down an aisle. I need some time." Brandon nodded. "Fair," he said. "Take as long as you need." Occasionally, mutual friends would tell me what Tanisha was saying about me. According to her, I had sued her sister over a small loan and destroyed their family over money, and abandoned her when she needed support. The irony would have been funny if it was not so exhausting. She painted herself as the victim of my cruelty rather than the architect of her own downfall. I stopped asking for updates. I realized that her version of events was not my problem anymore. I had the truth, the court rulings, and a nightly ache in my side to remind me what had actually happened. One afternoon, a few months after everything settled, Tanisha showed up at my new apartment. I saw her through the peephole, standing in the hallway with her arms wrapped around herself. For a moment, memories flashed through my mind. Our early dates, our wedding, the way she used to laugh. Then I remember the hospital room, the gas station flowers, and the comment about my timing being inconvenient. I did not open the door. I called the non-emergency police line and explained that my ex-wife, who I had asked not to contact me, was at my door and would not leave. An officer came, spoke to her politely, and suggested that if she continued to appear uninvited, I could pursue a restraining order. She left in tears. I watched from the peephole until she disappeared down the hall, then went back to playing with Kidney. At night now, my life is quiet. I come home from work, heat up something simple for dinner, and pay another chunk of my medical bills online. I watch the payments from Latoya hit my account each month like clockwork, $400 labeled with a case number. Every time I see the deposit, I remember her standing in Brandon's doorway, begging me to let it go. I also remember lying in that hospital bed with a fever and in four, wondering if my body was going to give up. The balance slowly shrinks, and with it, a little bit of the bitterness. Sometimes my mind goes back to the moment in our kitchen when I first told Tanisha about the surgery. I wonder if there was anything I could have said that would have changed her reaction. If I had cried or begged instead of trying to stay calm, would she have hesitated before draining the account? If I had been stricter earlier about our finances, insisting on separate accounts or requiring both signatures for large withdrawals, would it have changed anything? There is no way to know. The only certainty is the path we actually took and the scars it left. I do not regret calling Attorney Parker from that hospital bed. I do not regret filing for divorce or suing Latoya. Those decisions cost me money and time and emotional energy, but they also drew a line I should have drawn sooner. Tanisha and Latoya made their choices when they decided that a wedding was more important than my health and our agreed-upon financial boundaries. I made my choices when I refused to quietly accept that. The courts agreed that those choices were justified. The rest is just noise. Now my life is smaller in some ways, but feels more honest. I have a modest apartment, a temperamental cat named Kidney who yells at me when his bowl is half empty, a job that pays the bills, and a body that is still healing but largely functional. I have a therapist who calls me out when I start to slide into self-pity, and a family who will drive hours to sit on my couch and remind me that I am not crazy for expecting a spouse to value my life. I sleep through the night more often than not. Tanisha is sharing a cramped apartment with Latoya and sometimes Yolanda, juggling her own debt payments with the fallout from the emergency she helped create. Latoya is working 2 jobs, sending $400 a month to the man whose kidney function dropped because of a wedding that never happened. Reggie moved on. Last I heard, Latoya was engaged again to a man she met at her second job, a guy named Calvin. I hope he asks more questions about money than Reggie did. I hope he listens carefully when she talks about loyalty and family. As for me, I have a much clearer understanding of what I will not tolerate in a relationship. If a partner ever suggests using rent money, medical money, or any other survival-level fund for something frivolous, that will be the end of the conversation and probably the relationship. If someone ever tells me to wait for emergency surgery so their sibling can have a pretty venue and a choreographed first dance, I will not argue. I will call that what it is and walk away. The wedding that never happened cost a kidney, $8,000 in legal fees, a marriage, and a chunk of my ability to trust without double-checking. But it also gave me something back, a spine I did not know I needed to stiffen, and a willingness to stand up for myself, even when it makes other people furious. I am living alone with kidney, making my payments, going to therapy, and moving forward. Tanisha and Latoya are living with the consequences of treating my life and our agreement like an inconvenience. Sometimes the consequences of your actions are exactly as harsh as you deserve. Sometimes standing up for yourself means everyone on one side of a family story casts you as the villain. I can live with that. I would rather be the villain in someone else's narrative than the victim in my own. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.